Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jadley. I am so happy to welcome you to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so very delighted that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show and let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have 4 wonderful guests for you today. Amy Hess and Erin Stead will be joining us first to celebrate their brand new children's book. Valerie Woebkinberg will be joining us midway through the show, and then we'll be traveling back to Westbrook, Connecticut, the Connecticut Book Festival, to speak to author Diana Blau. Hey there, families! Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is Family Fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. We are really excited. Today we're going to be celebrating a brand new picture book. It's called Big Bear and Little Bear Go Fishing. We have the author and the illustrator joining us. First, from New York City, welcome the author, Amy Hess. Amy, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Delighted to have you on. And joining us from Ann Arbor in Michigan, the illustrator, Erin. Stead. Erin, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm excited to... Amy, can you start by telling us about Big Bear and Little Bear Go Fishing?
Well, I can tell you that they love each other very much, and Big Bear has an idea one day that he would like to go fishing, and Little Bear wants to do anything to be close to Big Bear, and off they go. But they have a lot of preparation before they take off.
That's reminiscent of my little bear when he was 3 or 4 years old would follow me around and want to do everything I was doing. Yeah.
There's a lot of mimicking here.
Yeah. Neat. Erin, what did you think when you first received the manuscript for this book?
I really loved this manuscript. The thing that I responded to about it was that not everyone lately is as good at writing simple texts for picture books as Amy is right now. I feel like it's something that is so important when kids are spending time reading picture books with their grown-ups, especially in the earlier days, to find these texts where the words repeat, but the story is simple, and yet there's enough detail to grab onto, and there's an atmosphere there. And Amy does that very well. So that was the thing I loved about this manuscript.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Erin, are you finding that the more and more books are they becoming more complicated or trying to tackle bigger issues instead of just telling a story?
I think the idea of books tackling bigger issues is actually a misunderstanding of what picture books have been doing for a long time. I think that there's a drive for a broader range of topics. And I think that that's a wonderful response and representation too, which was definitely needed. But what I think we're doing as adults who make picture books for kids is that we're forgetting how important story is in connecting us and telling us different ways to communicate with each other. A lot of times I feel like what we're doing right now that's trendy in picture books is that we're telling kids what their feeling is or how to feel. And when you're exploring a feeling in a story, it's different. You can put yourself in the shoes of the characters. And I think it's a subtler way to create understanding between people. So the people reading the book and the people hearing the book, or your friends or relatives or whoever.
Fascinating. Amy, was that thought right in the front of your mind as you were creating Big Bear and Little Bear Go Fishing?
I couldn't say it as articulately as Erin, but absolutely, I agree with everything you just everything. When I write a book, it's about the relationship, plain and simple. It's about the relationship, and what happens doesn't have to be much. I'm not plot driven at all. I'm all about the relationship and how the characters speak to each other. Because in my life, I think that's very important. My relationship and how we speak to each other, how we address each other. There's so much in between the lines here about their love and their desire to be together. And whatever they're doing, if they were fishing today, they might be roller skating tomorrow, but they would be the same two characters having that, response to each other. Yeah. That's what I go for when I write.
Yeah. Was there a particular relationship that was in your mind as you were creating this story?
I was thinking about my husband and my son and my father and me and my son with his son and his daughters. I was thinking about those kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
And making them possibly more perfect than they were and are, but real.
Yeah.
But real. And the love, and again, the love and the coziness. I'm very big. Cozy is like my middle name. It should have been my middle name, because I believe so much in that, in my life and in my books.
Yeah. As I'm looking at the cover art, I can feel that coziness. And Erin, is that something that you were looking to do, was to kind of visually demonstrate that coziness with the art in this book?
I enjoy drawing relationships. One of my favorite things to draw are actually, and it's not, it's not thrilling, but I like to draw the connection between two characters. I think that that's a really fun thing to try to make breathe from the paper. So I think if, there's one reason that people hire me, that might be it. So that's the thing I really enjoy doing. So coziness, I think that comes from the relationship that Amy wrote. And I just try to bring those words alive.
As I'm looking at the cover art, I'm very much there's a picture of me and my son. Like he's an adult now, but when he was 3 or 4 years old, and we're apple picking, and he is looking up to me the same way Little Bear is looking up to Big Bear. And you capture that. And as we're talking about this, there's so many memories flooding into me about both my being with my son and my daughter and my niece. And as you were saying, Amy, those relationships, sometimes it's not always going out on a big adventure. It's throwing the football around. It's apple picking. It's hanging out and having a sandwich together.
Yeah.
I used to, my dad had a photo studio. He was an amateur photographer, and he used to develop his pictures in our creepy basement. But I would go down there and spend hours just watching him, and he would let me move the pictures around in the different formulas. And it was very quiet. We didn't say much, but it was delicious just to be with him and to watch what he was doing.
I think grown-ups can forget, especially nowadays, that those little moments, those quiet moments, those everyday things, those are actually big moments to kids too. I mean, in this case, they could have only been here for 3 or 4 years. Everything is new. Everything needs some sort of understanding or direction. And so this is a very simple day, but for these characters, and maybe something that Big Bear has done, over and over again for years and years. But for Little Bear, this is still a big, important time together.
I'm really happy that you said that, Erin, because I was really lucky that when my kids were young, I didn't have the distraction of the smartphone.
Yeah.
There was nothing distracting me from being with my kids and being in that moment. And I'd like to think that I'd be able to keep the cell phone in my pocket if my kids are that age now, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I could.
Yeah.
And I would have missed out on so much had I not done that. Was that part of your thinking too, reminding parents, Amy, that to really rejoice in these moments, because they don't last long?
No, they don't. When I'm writing a story, my real challenge is the next sentence. And I'm not thinking about the parents or even the children who are going to be reading the story. It's the next sentence. And does this make sense? And does this ring true? Those are my challenges. And I try very hard not to be preachy or not to try to tell anybody how to think.
Mm-hmm.
I know how I think, and of course I think right. So hopefully that message comes through without preaching what I really think is right. Yes, parents should pay attention to their children, and children should pay attention to their parents.
Yeah.
Because the kids today also have their mechanisms and all of that. And I live in the past a lot a lot, and especially when I'm writing. I can't write contemporary children, because I don't know them as well as I know a child growing up in the 50s. And that's who I am, a child growing up a grown-up child who grew up in the 50s. And so everything is very basic. I don't have computers in any of my books, even in my novels. I don't add cell phones or computers or anything technological because I'm not comfortable with that. I do it, but I'm not comfortable writing about those things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Phil and I talk about this all the time. So when I got this manuscript, my daughter would have been 3.5, maybe. So I am currently raising a kid in front of all, with all of the distractions around us. But when my daughter was born, she didn't know what era she was born into. Mm-hmm. So her main directive as she's born isn't hand me an iPad. Mm-hmm. It's, I want to be with my grown-ups. I want to be with my mom or dad or whoever is my caretaker. And it's so easy for us, because these things are designed to be addictive, to forget that what that child actually needs is our eye contact. Mm-hmm. It's just time together. Mm-hmm. So, it's true. I think this book really doesn't come out and say, for goodness sake, pay attention, time is fleeting. But I do think that is a sneaky little thing that I try to do with my books is just to try to get people to slow down and take a moment together. I also think that that's the best part about making picture books is that you're giving people moments together. I just think that that's one of the fun things about having this job.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's. We hosted a literacy fair not too long ago, and it was in an urban school outside of Boston, and we had a really great turnout of kids and parents on a Saturday morning. And one of the things that I was celebrating with them was just how wonderful it is. In addition to, if you read with your kids, they hear more words, and studies show they're going to make more money and they're going to be more empathetic and all of that. But I said to the parents, taking 20 minutes a day and reading with your kids, it just feels so good, and it's so wonderful for the grown-ups. So, yeah, do it for your kids and all the benefits they're going to get from you reading with them, but do it for yourself because it's a gift that you give to yourself every day.
That's lovely, just lovely, and so true.
Yeah. Erin, what is your? Is there? I am far from being a visual artist. I can barely read my own handwriting. What is it? As you approach something, do you always kind of have the same style of illustrating, or is the manuscript really, saying this has to be cozy, or this manuscript has to be a little bit more action oriented?
It's a little of both. I am who I am, right? So I make what I make. And so a lot of times I'll get manuscripts and I'll think, oh, I actually really like this, but I'm not the right person for it. Because I just don't make things that are explosively funny or anything like that. So, which is not to say I won't get something where I'll think I'll try to push myself here or in a direction, but I think you have to be honest about how you make your art. That being said, I've made a few books now. I've been doing this for almost 15 years. And I will change how color is applied to a book or how rigid a picture is based on the characters. So this book is actually, it's a limited palette, but it's all watercolor. And the idea there is that there's a soft immediacy to the art because these characters aren't necessarily rigid in their routine. They're willing to bend. And that actually allows them to have more moments together. And so that's why this art is, for the watercolor part, is somewhat, with watercolor you have to be kind of quick. It's immediate. You can't plan too much. There's accidents in it. And I thought it fit in well with the relationship here.
Yeah, cool.
It's so spectacular. The art is just, I just look at this book over and over. It made me cry when I saw the finished product. I just cried. That, it's just beautiful. Yeah. It's classic. I mean, I'm talking about the look of it. I never talk about the writing being classic or anything like close to that. But the look of it is it's timeless. And that's my great hope always when I write a book. I don't want to write a book that's trendy. I want to write a book that might be around 30 years from now or 50 years from now. And this one will be. I know it because of your illustrations. I just know it.
Amy, one of the things that we encourage families to do, especially families with real young kids, is for them to take a picture walk through the book before they even read the words, just to go through and look at all the pictures and talk about what the story might be. What do you think families will say to each other if they're taking a picture walk through Erin's illustrations?
Great question. I think they'll they'll be wanting to know what's going to happen each step of the way. But I don't think they'll be flipping pages really fast to see what's going to happen. I think they will linger on the pictures and the detail and sort of enjoy the company of Big Bear and Little Bear, as I just enjoy their company. I want to be with them. I'd like to be on this fishing trip with them. But in the background, I'd like to be even closer to them and listening even harder to them to see what's going on.
That's really neat. I love having an opportunity to have an author and illustrator on, especially like you two, because you are so complimentary of each other's work and contributions to this book. And it's obviously very sincere that you both appreciate what you brought to the book. Erin, you love the story. Amy, you love the art and the illustrations, and it just
it's beyond love. It is. It just is. It's a step above.
I love that. Is it? I know that illustrators and authors don't have this. The ability to say, decide who they're going to work with in the future, but are you two hoping to be able to collaborate on a book together in the future?
I'm hoping.
So, yeah, I've been lucky that I actually think Amy's probably been pretty lucky too, that we, first of all, have a very good relationship with the editor of this book, and I think we both get to have our hands in who we're going to work with. But yeah, this was a good fit. This was fun to make.
Awesome. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Big Bear and Little Bear Go Fishing, and also find out more about both of you. So, Amy, can you start? Tell us where we can go to find out more about you.
AmyHess.com. It's not up to the minute because I'm not up to the minute, but there's some stuff in there.
That's great. And Erin, what about you? Where can we go to find out more about you and see more of your art?
Well, the best place to find my art is in the library. But otherwise, you can find me on my somewhat lackadaisical Instagram page at Erin Stead.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Big Bear and Little Bear Go Fishing. Our guests have been Amy Hess and Erin Stead. My friends, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For having us.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Cincinnati, Ohio. Our guest is here today to celebrate her Miles Across America series. Please welcome to the show, Valerie Woebkinberg. Hey, Valerie, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I am fantastic. I can't wait to talk about this series. I have been up and down the East Coast, all the way across to Los Angeles and back again, driving miles and probably a million miles over the past 35 years doing educational magic shows at schools in Cincinnati and little towns all across the country.
That is so fabulous. You've been miles across America yourself.
I have been, and what a beautiful country we have.
Yes, it is. It is beautiful. I haven't made it quite to California yet, but I've been up and down the East Coast, and pretty far west, but not to California yet.
So tell us about the series. Who are we going to meet in this series?
In this series, you meet Miles the cat, Miles the adventurous cat. He is based on our real cat, our pet, Miles Standish. And so he came to live at our house around Thanksgiving time. He's a teenager now, but so we decided on Miles Standish for a name for him. And he is what we call a backyard adventurer. So he goes around the backyard, occasionally across the street or to the neighbor's house, but basically stays around our house. And so we started making up stories about adventures that he might take in the backyard, wondering, does Miles think he's on some grand adventure when he's stalking around the backyard? And one day we said, let's take him on one. And with a name like Miles Standish, we decided his first adventure would be to the Mayflower. So that's how the series, it started with Miles on the Mayflower. And that's how it all began. And we've had such a great time. Miles has had a great time. He's the guide. Miles is the guide in the story. And in each of the books, he meets another animal who then they can converse.
Wonderful.
And then it brings fictional Miles adventure blended with historical information of the people and events in American history.
That's really cool. You know, our studio is about 45 minutes away from the Mayflower here in Boston. And I'm wondering if Miles had the same reaction that many of my family members and friends, when they come to Boston, they say, we have to go down to Plymouth and see the Mayflower and Plymouth Rock. And the Mayflower is great. But I was wondering if Miles had the same reaction seeing Plymouth Rock that everybody else has, which is, it's a rock.
Yes. I was just talking to somebody about that yesterday who had just recently been there. The first time I was there was 30-some years ago. It was way before the series or any idea of it started. And we were going down the hill and saw this iron fencing, and everybody was crowded around and thinking, what are they looking at? What are they looking at? Thought maybe it was some kind of exotic ocean animal had gotten in there or was on display or something. And it was so shocking and it was so surprising to see that. So,
Valerie.
So yes, that's the same reaction. And Miles was surprised at it too. Now, unfortunately, Miles did not get to put his paws on it.
Okay. Oh, that's why the rock is in jail.
Yeah. Yes. So, but he was a little, he found it humorous too.
Well, you're very kind to say that it was surprising. Most of the people I know say it's disappointing, but
yes. Don't
say that too loud. The tourist people down in Plymouth will be mad at me. But
yes.
So what other parts of the country does Miles journey to?
Well, right now, after Miles has been to Plymouth, then he just takes up what I always call a hop, skip, and a jump down to Boston. And that story is about the Boston Tea Party. It takes place on the Freedom Trail, and in some of this starts at Bunker Hill, top of the Bunker Hill Monument, goes across the bridge, and in the Old South Meeting House. And in that story, Miles meets, of course, a Boston Terrier named Liberty, and then he is able to talk about the Boston Tea Party. And on the anniversary of the Boston Tea Party every year, there's a citywide reenactment. So, of course, Miles just happened to be in Boston on that day and was able to have a little part in the reenactment.
Very cool.
So those are those two stories. And then the third one, the most recent story, Miles heads on back to Ohio, and the story is called Miles' First Flight, and it is about the Wright brothers. So there's what they call the Aviation Trail in Dayton, and there are numerous Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, several sites where the Wright brothers had bicycle shops, and then the Huffman Prairie where they did a lot of experiments, and then, of course, the United States Air Force Museum is in Dayton. Yeah. So that's where that story takes place.
Why do you think it is so important for kids to learn not only about our country, but also learn about our history?
Well, I think that all of these events, we chose the Mayflower because of Miles' name. That's kind of how that started. But each of the events and the people, all of the people in the stories, and the 3 stories now and the stories to come, we want to showcase that there are people from the past who are courageous. They did courageous things. Everyday people doing bold and courageous things. But each of the events in the books led to something else. And so the people came from England on the Mayflower, and it led to, other people coming and everything. And then in the Boston Tea Party is considered the most significant event before the Revolutionary War. So that led to that, and then the founding of the country. And of course, the Wright brothers led to, the flight. And it only, that's a little side note, but in 1903 was when the Wright brothers had the first flight. But then only 66 years later, in 1969, was when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. So such a short time. And I think if they're lacking some kind of understanding that these things, the going to the moon or the founding of the country, they all had things that came before that allowed for that to happen. And so there's a way in the stories where Miles is their guide, and there's not they're not burdened with information, but when Miles is meeting the costumed actors in Boston and Plymouth and listening to them and then talking with his animal friend, some of the concepts become conversational. So you're not reading it like a textbook. It's just this date, this name, this date, but there's an understanding of what is going on. Yeah. And so, for example, in the Miles and the Sons and Daughters of Liberty, they are talking about the no taxation without representation. And children learn that and they can repeat that, but then some kind of understanding about what that actually means, and who are the loyalists and who are the patriots. So when you have some kind of understanding of what happened before America became a country, then you might have a better understanding of what it is now. So, and we chose, like I said, we chose the Mayflower because Miles Standish, he thought we should go there first. But then the Boston Tea Party and the Wright brothers, and then the next book, which will be about the Apollo projects, they're events that I like, that I think are significant, and our family likes. So we do when we go do our research, because that also led to so many things. We couldn't have the space station or the going to Mars, or now the Intrepid going back to the moon, without all of those things happening first.
Yeah. I do think it's really important for us and for our kids to have a sense of what came before, and especially of the people who made those things happen, and the fact that they were, in most cases, just ordinary people who had a chance to do extraordinary things.
Yes. When you go to Dayton and they talk about the Wright brothers, they always use the phrase, they had a soaring dream and the dedication and determination to make it happen. And I think that can be for adults, and for children, in anything. That having the dream, it doesn't necessarily mean it is going to happen, but you have some determination to do something and you are dedicated to it. And so they had a lot of experimentation, and it didn't all happen overnight. And so, I mean, that's kind of what's happening. That's going on with me as an author. And me, I had a long teaching career, but having that determination. So you might be in a situation where you are just a regular person. The Wright brothers were regular people, but they had some kind of a dream, and they had this determination, the dedication. And I think the same with the people who sailed on the Mayflower and the the colonists, not just the people who took part in the Boston Tea Party, but all of the colonists who were determined to have started a country away from England.
Yeah. That idea of a dream, I think it's so important that we encourage our kids to dream. I mentioned to you that I've done educational magic shows, and one of the neat things about being in front of 400 or 500 kids, it's very thrilling and it's a lot of fun. This really gets your adrenaline going, but it also gives you an audience that you can test some ideas and some theories on, and not dangerous theories by any means. But I was reading a study that said that kids who have dreams do so much better in school, and they're happier, and they've experienced less anxiety. And I thought, well, that's every kid has a dream, but the study's like going, no, a lot of kids don't. So I said I want to check this out because I think most kids dream, and I asked an audience. There was about 400 kids. I said, how many of you folks have a dream? You want to do, in the future, you want to do this or do that? Just raise your hand. And if there were 40% of the kids that raised a hand, I'd be really surprised. And so for the next week or so, I repeated this in different audiences, and it was always about the same percentage of kids. It got to the point where I even asked one of the teachers, I said, did I ask that question right? But it's like, this is so important. How do you think, as a teacher, how do you think parents can encourage their kids to dream?
I think like maybe putting out things that are possibilities. It seems like a lot of kids have this dream or this idea that I can be whatever I want to be. And then sometimes they choose that to be around here, it's to be on the Reds or to be on the Bengals. And that is, of course, a great dream, but it isn't going to be a reality for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So having multiple dreams, or having not even just like a fallback, like people say, but having possibilities. So when you that's one of the things I promote with reading across America, reading about different parts of the country, because you're reading about people in history, because something might spark your interest. I did not think I would be doing this 20 years ago, but I have really fallen in love. I've always liked history, but I've really fallen in love with the in-depth research for the history. And putting out possibilities of things that are possible. You know, you're not going to invent the first airplane, or you're not going to do that anymore. But what are, thinking different things by visiting different places, something might spark an interest in somebody, and then they will want to learn more about that. And you never really know. It doesn't necessarily, reading another book doesn't mean you're going to become a writer or a speaker, but you don't really know where it will help you, but you don't know where it will take you. But when you have all of these kind of possibilities that, visiting places or even reading about things, then that can really help like spark something of what could you do with that.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I love that idea. We traveled a lot when, I was a kid with my family, and my family certainly has traveled a lot when the kids were younger. They would oftentimes come out. My beautiful daughter and I had a chance to perform in Cincinnati. What a lovely, lovely town. This is a question that I do love history, and I love learning about people and places and what happened. But so much of my education, it seemed like the people who were writing the textbooks went out of their way to make history boring. I'm like, when we're telling stories about what happened in the past. I mean, story is in the word history, but it always just comes off like, like you're dealing a deck of cards with a fact on it, and
yes. They did this, and then they did this, and then they did this, and in this year they did this, and then they did this. And it has to be more than that. I mean, in all of the stories, I think about the people on the Mayflower. They had to be. It's just not they got on and then they sailed for 66 days. They had to be talking. There was the storm, and then the part of the ship broke apart. They had to be talking about what it was like, mm-hmm. and talking to each other about how we're going to survive and all of that. And, I've met so many people who talk about when they see the book of the Miles on the Mayflower, they want to share one of my relatives, one of my ancestors was on the Mayflower, and they want to share that. And then we'll share a little story, and I'll share my ancestor who was on the Mayflower. Sometimes it's the same person, sometimes it's not. But, it is interesting to think about like how they might have felt, what they went through to be there, and then think about what they did going forward. And of course, with everything with the Boston Tea Party, they were talking in secret, and there's like talking a story, telling stories. So it's so much more than just on this date they met here, on this date they did this. And I think that kids think that is boring, and so I want to bring some excitement. Bringing history to life is what I say. Yeah. To encourage, not just encourage the history part, but to encourage them to read and to see, have an adventure with Miles. And then if your interest is sparked about the event in the book, then you will seek out more knowledge about it. Yeah. Find other books to read.
Yeah. You're going to, I hope you don't react to this the way all my teachers used to react to me when I was in middle school with my observations. But you're talking about coming over in the Mayflower and how interesting that must have been. 66 days. The first thing that my middle grade mind thought was, oh man, that must have stunk, the people together in a boat on a...
Yes. I mean, when you've been on the Mayflower too.
Yeah.
I can barely stand up.
Yes.
We're down where the people are now, and people say, well, they were shorter at that time, and they might have been shorter, but still, it's a pretty low ceiling. And because when I've been there several times, but in the time that I was there most recently for finalizing the research, it did really give me a different way of thinking about what would it have been like? What would it have been like to be on this? Where would you have sat? Where would you sit? Where would you, what would it have been like to be down in the dark for basically 2 months? Mm-hmm. And then to question myself, would I have gone? And then when I ask myself that, then you think about the courage and conviction of the people, not just the pilgrims, but there were, the other people, some of the people who went as indentured servants. That my relative was one of those people. Uh-huh. And because they couldn't be landowners in England. And then the sailors too. They were, it wasn't easy for any of them. So they had that courage and conviction to go. And then now as an adult, I have the ability to really seriously consider what it might have been like. Mm-hmm. And even then, I don't think you can't really even think about 400 years ago, but you have a better understanding of would I have gotten on the ship? Yeah. I don't think they had a lot of conviction and courage to go, but I don't think they knew maybe what it was going to be like.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think, having these discussions with our kids while we're reading a fun book like Miles Across America, it's a great way to compare and contrast what life is like now, what life was like, and to think about what life will be like in the future. We're talking about the people, your ancestor, 66 days on the Mayflower to get from Europe or England to Plymouth in Massachusetts. My beautiful wife and I just went to Bologna, Italy, and it took 6 hours.
Yes.
So, how lucky are we to be living in this time? And what's the next 50 years, 100 years going to bring?
Yes, I think it is really interesting. A lot of people have asked me if Miles really walked all the way to Plymouth in Miles on the Mayflower. He actually walks. We don't say he started from Cincinnati. It's sort of that any town. He just starts from his house. But they asked me about that, if he walked there. And then, when I talk about that part being fiction, but then I said I went with one of my grown sons went with me, and they asked me if we hiked all the way to them. No, but we actually did take a car. We did take a road trip in order to make it a little more, still not 66 days, 66 miles an hour, about, even more. But to see what it would have, a little bit different. And then you have that, that understanding of getting closer. when I talk to people around this area, one of the nice parts about having Miles' first flight set in Dayton is that Dayton is so close to Cincinnati. And so people can go to that. Not that they can't go to Massachusetts from Cincinnati, but it is much easier to drive up the road to Dayton, and then you can see the places that are in the book in a much easier way than you could in Massachusetts. So when I've spoken to children at schools around Dayton, they recognize the sites, and then they say, oh, we've been there, we took a field trip there, and then that's really exciting for them. But then with the other books, it's kind of nice because you don't know if you're going to go there.
Right.
And so then you can see it. You can see it even though it's far away, knowing that you might go there sometime.
Yeah. Really, really fun. So many opportunities for conversations with your kids. And since it's going to be a series, get that anticipation for the next book that's going to come out. And where will Miles go next?
Yes. People are always asking me, kids are asking me. And when I do speak at schools, I ask for suggestions, and they have, now for a lot of people, younger kids will say Disney World. He should go to Disney World. And then for the local Cincinnati people, the amusement park Kings Island is around here. And then they will suggest, Paris, and they suggest these other places that are not in the United States, but younger. You see that understanding where you don't really understand what the difference between a city and a state and a country and another country is. So they're all good suggestions. I love the moon landing. I was a fan of watching that. I'm a fan of the Apollo project, and it sort of goes with it follows the Wright brothers. They took a piece of the plane of the first flyer up to the moon on Apollo 11, and so they're kind of going to, right now they're sort of like too early American, too about flight. I'm not sure the next two are going to be like that, but we have like several in the works, and we'll have to see how it all goes but it is exciting to think about where he might go. And for me, like to research what kind of places, what is really important to American history. I haven't really gone, the one that's going to go out west is the Pony Express. And I was working on that in 2020, and they do a re-ride every year. East to west 1 year and west to east. And then in 2020, they didn't do it, even though it was outside. But I was in contact with people who were organizing the rewrite and would have done the rewrite. And so that'll be a way to get Miles out west. But then it made me think about, other people have suggested the Transcontinental Railroad and the gold, looking at Sutter's Mill for the gold. And so all of those kind of things they're all important, but I don't know. So it'll just have, we read, we research, we travel, and then something will spark us of like where Miles could go and, where that'll lead him.
Wonderful. Hey, Valerie, where can people go to find out more about you and find out more about Miles Across America?
Well, they can head to my website, which is ValerieWoebkinberg.com. That's easy. I'm on Facebook at Miles Across America and Instagram at Miles Across America.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of the Miles Across America series. Our guest has been Valerie Woebkinberg. Valerie, thank you so very much for being with us.
Thank you. It was such a great opportunity, and I enjoyed our conversation, and I hope everyone will check out Miles and maybe head on an adventure with him themselves.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly joy maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. I am really excited. We're going to meet a couple of friends right now. Our guest is Diana Blau. Diana, how are you?
I'm great.
You have a couple of friends with you. They're awfully cute. Who are they?
So this is my childhood bear, Tinker, and this is my husband's childhood teddy bear, Barry, and they're the stars of my book.
And what's the name of your book?
It's called Barry and Tinker, Young at Heart.
Awesome. My beautiful wife has her childhood doll.
Yeah.
Still, it's right next to her bed. It's it looks like a donkey, but I don't know what it quite is.
Okay.
But it's adorable.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining that your story is pretty adorable too.
It is, yeah.
Tell us.
It's based on true events. So Barry and Tinker were sitting on my husband's bed. I would make the bed, and the last touch would be putting Barry and Tinker on top. And then when I had my daughter Charlotte, she started to want to play with the bears, even though they were really old and she had shiny new toys. So I thought it would be a neat idea to write a children's book about two old teddy bears who desperately want to get off the bed and play again, because just because they're old, teddy bears never want to stop having adventures. So they try and capture Charlotte's attention several times until one day they have success.
That's wonderful. Old bears, we do like to still have fun. We can't roll around as much as we used to, but...
Right, yeah. And what's nice is when I read this story to children, I like to ask them about their favorite stuffed animal, but quite often the parents will come up to me after and say, I still have my favorite stuffed animal too. Or, just like in the book, I've given mine to my child to have and play with it so that, teddy bears keep playing and not sitting around.
That's really neat. What a great connection between you and your daughter, playing with the same toys.
Yeah, and what's been nice through the creative process of making this book is I've gotten her input. So it's been a nice bonding between us, and she feels like she's invested in the book. She's in the book, so all the illustrations are of her and myself and my husband and the teddy bears, so it reflects our family. So some say it's a realistic fiction.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. How does your daughter feel? Obviously she's excited about it, but what was her reaction when she first saw the book and saw herself on the pages?
Yeah, I mean, she's thrilled. It's exciting for her, to see herself in a book. When I read it to her class, one of the children said, "Charlotte, you're famous." Yeah, so it's nice.
And how do you feel, or do you ever take the time to think about the fact that your family story is not only touching your daughter, but touching thousands of families all over the world?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had this idea, and it was like a passion project because it was a very personal story. And I realized as I read it, I'm really connecting with kids and with parents who have the same story. I didn't really talk about it. Like, adults don't really talk about the fact that they may have their teddy bears on their bed. But I've sort of uncovered something that is already out there, and so it's a very relatable story to people.
Yeah.
And actually, I had a little boy in Atlanta want to do a FaceTime call with me and the bears, because he wanted to introduce his favorite stuffed animal to mine. So it's a lot of, I'm learning a lot about this, like, subculture of stuffed animals, and kids loving their stuffed animals as much as I did, and adults alike.
Yeah. Tell me, the story obviously is very personal and based on a real story, but had you always wanted to be a children's author?
No, it never crossed my mind. Once I had children, my favorite part of the day is reading to them at night and us picking stories together, and eventually you sort of start to learn which ones you like and gravitate towards. So, no, it was really just that I had this idea. My friends are not surprised that I wrote a book about Tinker, because he's been with me everywhere. So the fact that he's in it isn't surprising, but the fact that I wrote a children's book isn't something that I had ever really planned. It kind of organically happened as I had children, and then this story came about, and I thought it would be a fun project, and I'm having a blast.
So are Barry and Tinker going to have future adventures?
So I'm actually writing, a second book, but it's an offshoot, so it actually stars... in the book, I'd also have my son in here, and he has a favorite lovey called Lammy. And Lammy's in here, but not featured. And the moral of that story is called Losing Lammy. And it's about the fact that because he brings Lammy everywhere, he also loses Lammy everywhere, which many people can relate to. And the bears have a cameo in the book and help Lammy, learn how to deal with getting lost. And then Charlotte, who's the main star in this book, teaches her younger brother Eli how to be responsible for his things. So it's like, I'd say it's like a sister book.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Really nice. Really nice. So how have you adapted to this? Are you? I know that the book 2 is going to come out, a sister book, but are you thinking that this is something that is going to be sustainable, that you're going to be writing lots of books in the future?
Yeah, I think so. And I've just started. So this just launched in January. And I have so many ideas, so many schools I want to reach out to do readings, places I want to expose Barry and Tinker to, and different sort of creative outlets and avenues. This is my first book festival.
Yes.
So I feel like I'm just at the beginning with this book, and then I'll bring on the sister book. But I know I have lots of ideas.
That's wonderful.
For more.
Where can we go to find out more about Barry and Tinker and more about you?
Great. And my website is Diana Blau, DianaBlau.com. And on Instagram, I'm at Diana_Blau_author.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Until then, we hope you connect with us on social media, Facebook.com/ReadingWithYourKids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram and TikTok, and at JedleyMagic on Twitter or X. Also, please visit our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ReadingWithYourKids. And of course, you're most welcome to join us on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. I want to start by thanking our guests, Amy Hess, Erin Stead, Valerie Woebkinberg, Diana Blau. I want to thank my incredible team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Stella Cherie, Hannah Bosange, Julia Lipman, Judy Hu, Alyssa Montiero. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you on the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.